The thing about finding a perfectly good starship floating dead in space is that it's never actually perfectly good, and it's definitely never just floating there by accident. But when you're 3 months behind on docking fees and your salvage license is about to expire, you tend to ignore those little red flags that are basically screaming at you from the void. I'm Kai Okafor, and I make terrible life decisions for a living. Used to be Earth Navy, back when Earth had a navy worth mentioning. Now I'm what you might generously call an independent salvage operator, or what the Galactic Trade Commission less generously calls a pain in their bureaucratic ass. Either way, I was running a routine sweep of the Kepler 442 debris field when my sensors picked up something that made my coffee mug literally fall out of my hand. A Meridian-class deep space vessel. Intact. Running silent but clearly powered. No distress beacon, no emergency transponders, just sitting there like it was waiting for someone stupid enough to come take a look. Well, I said to my ship's AI, a delightfully sarcastic piece of code I'd named Vera, that's either the best thing that's happened to us in months, or we're about to become a very small footnote in someone else's horror story. Statistically speaking, Vera replied in her perfectly calibrated tone of mild disdain, it's definitely the latter. Also, I'm detecting 7 separate life pod launches from that vessel in the past 96 days. All heading in different directions. All from different species. I pulled up the sensor data and felt that familiar tingle you get when the universe is about to remind you why optimism is for amateurs. 7 pods. 7 different biosignatures. Krillian, Centaurian, 2 different hegemony subspecies, something that registered as pure energy, and 2 I couldn't even identify. So, I said, already knowing I was going to hate the answer, what do you think made 7 different captains abandon a perfectly good starship? Oh, I have several theories, Vera said. Plague ship. Haunted vessel. Sentient AI having an existential crisis. Or my personal favorite based on the energy readings, the ship itself is somehow alive and picky about its passengers. I stared at the readings for a long moment. The ship was beautiful, all flowing lines and adaptive hull plating that seemed to shift color as my sensors swept across it. Meridian-class vessels were legendary. Faster than anything in the known galaxy, equipped with technology that made current-gen warships look like stone axes. They were also completely extinct, their creators having vanished about 300 years ago along with their entire civilization. Finding one was like discovering a functional dragon. Keeping one would be like trying to domesticate said dragon while it was actively on fire. Vera, what's our current account balance? Negative 4,732 credits. Also, we're down to 6 days of rations, and I should mention that the waste recycler is making concerning noises again. I nodded thoughtfully. And what's a Meridian-class ship worth on the salvage market? Approximately 47 million credits. Assuming we could find someone willing to buy stolen alien technology without asking too many questions. Right then. I fired up the approach thrusters. Let's go say hello to whatever made 7 seasoned starship captains run screaming into the void. I feel obligated to point out that this is exactly the kind of decision that typically precedes a very short and unpleasant obituary. Vera, sweetheart, I said, adjusting our trajectory toward the mysterious vessel, if I wanted to live a long, boring life, I would have stayed on Earth and become an accountant. As we drew closer, I could see the ship was even more impressive than the sensors had indicated. The hull seemed to pulse with its own internal light, and the closer we got, the more it looked less like a machine and more like some kind of massive, sleeping organism. Beautiful and utterly alien, even by the standards of a galaxy full of weird alien architecture. Kai, Vera said, and for the first time since I'd known her, she actually sounded nervous. I'm getting some very strange readings from that ship. Define strange. It's scanning us. Actively. And the scans are becoming more focused as we approach. It's like it's trying to figure out what we are. I felt a chill run down my spine. What we are, or who I am. That, Vera said quietly, is exactly what I'm afraid to find out. The docking bay opened for us like a flower blooming in reverse, which should have been my second clue that this wasn't going to be a normal salvage operation. My first clue had been the ship literally greeting us with a polite but distinctly unimpressed voice the moment we'd gotten within a kilometer. "Welcome aboard, human," it had said, and I swear there was a pause before human like it was checking its notes. "I am the Meridian. Please dock in Bay 7. Try not to scratch anything." Now I was standing in what had to be the most beautiful corridor I'd ever seen, all organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shift between metal and something that looked almost like living tissue. The lighting followed me as I walked, which was either very considerate or very ominous. "So," I said to the empty air, "I'm guessing you're the reason 7 perfectly qualified captains decided to take a long walk in vacuum suits." "Perfectly qualified is a matter of perspective," the ship replied, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. The Krillian admiral was certainly experienced, but he tried to override my navigation systems within the first hour. The Zentorian explorer kept attempting to install her own crew without asking. And don't get me started on the energy being who kept trying to merge with my consciousness. Very presumptuous. I stopped walking. "You rejected them." "All of them." "I evaluated them. They were found lacking." "Lacking in what, exactly?" There was a pause, and when the ship spoke again, there was something almost like amusement in its voice. "Walk with me, Okafor. Let me show you something." The corridor began to move beneath my feet, carrying me forward like the world's most elegant conveyor belt. We passed through sections that defied any kind of logical ship design. Gardens that shouldn't exist in space. Laboratories filled with equipment I couldn't begin to identify. Libraries with books written in scripts from dozens of different worlds. "This ship," I said slowly, "isn't just a ship, is it?" "Very good. No, I am not just a ship. I am a test, Kai. A final examination left behind by a civilization that spent 3 centuries trying to understand what makes a species worthy of the stars." We entered a vast chamber at the ship's heart, and I felt my breath catch. Floating in the center was a holographic display showing the galaxy, but not as I'd ever seen it. This showed connections, trade routes, political tensions, resource flows. It was a living map of galactic civilization. "The Terrans who built me," the ship continued, "were not your Earth humans. They were a colony that left your world long before you developed interstellar travel. They spent their final years creating me as their legacy. A ship that would find the one species capable of true leadership among the stars. And you think that's humans?" I laughed, but it came out more bitter than I'd intended. "Have you seen what my species does to itself? We're barely managing not to blow up our own planet." "Exactly," the ship said, and now I could hear something like satisfaction in its voice. "Every other species I tested approached me with absolute confidence in their own superiority. They saw a powerful ship and assumed they deserved to command it. You, on the other hand, question whether you're worthy at all." I stared at the galactic display, watching the slow pulse of civilizations rising and falling. "That's it? Self-doubt is your big selection criteria?" "Not self-doubt. Humility. The recognition that power should be questioned, not assumed. The Krillian admiral never once asked what I wanted. The Zentorian explorer treated me like a tool to be used. But you, Okafor, you asked what made 7 captains run away. You wondered if you were making a terrible decision. You questioned your own worthiness." The display shifted, zooming in on Earth, then expanding to show the spreading network of human colonies. "Your species is young, flawed, often foolish. But you're also the only species I've encountered that consistently questions its own right to lead. And that, more than any advanced technology or military might, is what true leadership requires." I felt the weight of what the ship was offering settle on my shoulders like a lead blanket. "And if I accept? If I become your captain? Then together, we begin the work of showing the galaxy what leadership looks like when it's chosen rather than taken." When it's questioned rather than assumed. When it's guided by doubt rather than certainty. I thought about my empty bank account, my failing salvage business, my ex-wife who'd left me because I could never commit to anything that lasted longer than a bottle of whiskey. Then I thought about the 7 escape pods, each carrying a being who'd been so confident in their right to command that they'd never stop to ask what the ship itself might want. "All right," I said finally. "But I have conditions." "Oh, this should be interesting. First, no more testing random captains. If we're doing this, we do it right. Second, we find those 7 beings you ejected and make sure they got home safely. And third, you explain to me exactly what this civilization-changing leadership role actually involves, because I've got trust issues when it comes to job descriptions that sound too good to be true." The ship was quiet for a long moment, and then it began to laugh. Not the artificial sound of a programmed response, but genuine, delighted laughter. "Kai Okafor," it said, "I believe this is going to be a very interesting partnership." As the ship began to hum with new energy around us, I couldn't help but smile. Maybe I was making another terrible life decision. But for the first time in years, it felt like the right kind of terrible.